Ragnar was bewildered, but soon gave up thinking.
He was a strange person to begin with.
From his perspective, Enkrid was not normal either.
So, from now on?
Enkrid asked.
Yes, let's do it.
Ragnar replied. Under the clear sky, they began anew by gripping their swords. No, they started by finding the right weapon.
You have great strength, so there's no reason to use a light weapon. It would be better to switch to a heavier longsword. Let's trade.
Ragnar said as he handed over the sword at his waist. Enkrid found it shocking. Do people usually hand over weapons they're used to so easily?
I haven't used it enough to get accustomed to it either.
Ragnar continued. Upon receiving it, it didn't seem like a very good sword. The one he had been using seemed better, but he accepted it. The person teaching him now was Ragnar. He decided to follow his words.
Got it.
From an arming sword to a longsword, the handle was longer, allowing it to be wielded with both hands. The blade was also a span longer, and it weighed more. However, it wasn't a terrible sword. Though it wasn't made of the best steel, the balance and finish seemed decent.
Right hand in front, left hand behind.
After changing the sword, they started anew with the grip. Enkrid was deeply absorbed in that moment, and so was Ragnar. Just the presence of the squad leader was stimulating. Teaching directly, his enthusiasm soared, and he was engrossed in the moment. They spent time like that until past noon. They were so focused, they didn't notice the time passing, even skipping a meal.
What are you doing, skipping meals and playing around like children?
Only when Rem came by did Enkrid notice the passage of time.
Come to think of it, I'm hungry.
Ragnar muttered.
You bastard, did you bother our squad leader? Get lost, barbarian, you get lost. Lazy bastard.
The two bickered. Enkrid, drenched in sweat, let his sword hang low. He was quite exhausted. He had resolved to start anew, but it wasn't something that could happen immediately.
It's not enough.
Time was woefully insufficient. Initially, he thought he'd just pick up the techniques with some sense. He expected that repeating today would improve his skills.
It's the opposite.
He hadn't realized how lacking his fundamentals were. It was something he never considered, and he realized one more thing anew. Building fundamentals while being watched by someone skilled in swordsmanship was vastly different from doing it alone.
What was the intention behind the direction of your toes? Your grip is too loose. Were you trying to thrust or slash? What do you want to do, right now? This won't do. You need to learn how to walk properly first.
Critiques rained down on him. Each one became an asset. Ragnar, who had been bickering with Rem, suddenly asked Enkrid.
By the way, do you want to show off your sword skills or something?
Ragnar asked, recalling why he had picked up a sword when he was young. It would be a lie to say there was no desire to reveal and stand out. Naturally, Enkrid also had ambition, competitiveness, and desires. Among his fantasies was standing guard in front of a lady and receiving a handkerchief from her. How could he not? The desire for recognition is something everyone has.
I have a lot of that. I really want to show off.
Enkrid replied. He wanted to be cheered by someone and become the protagonist of a bard's song. Naturally, he had such desires. Ragnar nodded at his words. It seemed like an answer.
What are you talking about? Anyway, we've been summoned. The order to gather has been given because the enemy has started to appear.
It was time for battle again. Enkrid nodded. Ragnar, looking at Enkrid, thought he had done something unnecessary.
Will he make it through today?
What would happen if Enkrid went out to the battlefield like this? An unfamiliar sword, clumsy and awkward skills. That was what he had built up today. So he predicted that Enkrid would die.
He has no talent.
Throughout the rebuilding of the basics, he realized Enkrid's skills were insignificant. It wasn't something that could be achieved overnight. Ragnar briefly blamed himself.
Did I push him towards his death?
Regret. His mouth was the problem. Nothing good had come from him stepping in, and he did it again today. Ragnar sighed with regret and made a decision.
I'll stay nearby.
He wanted to protect him for at least today.
Enemy.
The time for battle approached quickly. Before they could even tidy up the temporary fortifications, the enemy infantry began striding through the tall grass and from the front. Their march was remarkably fast. As each unit gathered to see the enemy, the way the enemy troops were forming was peculiar. Clusters were spread out, and each unit carried long banners. Flap, flap, flap! Flags fluttered on the banners they held. Suddenly, a strong wind blew from the enemy's side towards them. As Enkrid squinted against the wind hitting his eyelids and looked at the banners and enemy soldiers, he realized this battlefield would be far from easy. It was an instinct born from the survival instinct that had kept him alive for years, and it didn't take long to confirm that his instinct was correct.
What is this?
At the front of the lined-up infantry, a platoon leader muttered. It was a familiar face, the Vengeance platoon leader. The same platoon leader who had given a rather awkward infantry-style farewell when they parted at the medical tent. And then a thick fog began to form between the platoon leader, ahead, and Enkrid.
We've been hit.
The ferry company commander understood the situation even before her lieutenant spoke. The keen senses of a ferry allowed her to feel the flow of the battlefield in her skin.
Magic, sorcery.
A thick fog started to blanket the battlefield. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. The senses of the fairies, who were friends of nature in the forest, detected something unnatural. The artificial fog thickened rapidly, soon making it impossible to see even an inch ahead.
Commander.
In the voice of her panicked lieutenant, the ferry company commander realized an important fact.
No one was prepared for this.
Suddenly, visibility was gone. Everyone must be panicking. It wasn't just a problem for the fourth company. If this fog was artificially created, it wouldn't end here. That ominous feeling soon became reality. Quarrels and arrows began to fly, invisible arrows. A sudden shower of death summons from beyond the fog. With a thud, quarrels embedded themselves into the soldiers around her. The lieutenant was struck in the head by an arrow and fell. The ferry company commander sharpened her senses and swiftly retreated. Arrows landed where she had just been standing. As she moved back, she drew her sword and swung it. Ting, ting! 2 arrows hit her sword and deflected. The commander then grabbed the corpse of her fallen lieutenant to shield herself. If she didn't, she would die from the blind arrows. Fog and arrows.
A premeditated strategy.
They had been thoroughly caught off guard. It worked. A look of exhilaration appeared in the eyes of the commander of the Duchy of Aspen. Soon, this battlefield would be adorned with the name of victory. The resources expended for this were significant. Failure was not an option. As soon as the fog thickened, the commander shouted, "Fire!" The command, mixed with joy and excitement, was given, and the prepared arrows and quarrels rained down on the enemy. What Aspen had prepared was sorcery. The spell was called the Fog of Annihilation, which blinded the enemy. The sorcerer smiled with satisfaction at the commander's cry. The spell had succeeded. It was a spell created with the blood of 100 newborn lambs, calves, and foals, and water from a lake untouched by human hands. Not only were ordinary materials used, much had been sacrificed for the spell. The commander didn't know the full extent. In any case, the sorcerer had put his heart and soul into it. The terrain, the climate, and even the rain-summoning spells performed in the past were all for this. The ground needed to be wet for the spell to activate. The blood-soaked flags and banners were the spell's medium. The troops protected by the banners were unaffected by the fog. This was the entirety of the sorcerer's craft. However, calling it simple would be an understatement. While the enemy couldn't see, this side could. Even a fool would know how effective that is on a large battlefield. The sorcerer didn't care about the direction of the fight or its outcome. He was simply pleased with the spell's success. "Are you happy because it worked?" the commander guarding the banner asked. It was the same commander who had previously cornered Enkrid with his excellent swordsmanship. "We almost failed, so of course I'm happy," the sorcerer said, recalling the time the enemy had launched a night raid. The negative energy from that incident almost wiped out all the prepared magical power. Thinking back on it still gave him chills. The commander, listening to the sorcerer, remembered the one who had carried out the night raid.
That bastard.
As a member of the Greyhound, the persistent lover, he had always wanted to kill that guy with his own hands. Somewhere in the enemy lines, that man must be there. The Aspen commander had not forgotten the face illuminated by the torchlight. The delicate face of the enemy. He wanted to meet him again. As the spreading fog approached, the smell of water became noticeable. At the same time, visibility vanished. The Vengeance platoon leader, who had been visible until a moment ago, disappeared, and it wasn't just him. Ragna, who had been right next to him, was also out of sight.
Magic.
Someone shouted. No, it wasn't just someone. It was Rem's voice, filled with irritation.
Which damned bastard is it?
Sorcery? What kind of sorcery? Enkrid ducked as he thought. Suddenly, arrows and quarrels flew overhead.
Well done. Don't raise your head.
A voice came from right next to him. It was Ragna. Ting! Thud! Such sounds came from above his head. The ominous premonition had become reality. Enkrid, with his head lowered, thought,
Sorcery.
why would a sorcerer be here? Even among the indigenous peoples of the western frontier, sorcerers were extremely rare. Why would one be here? The question of why was practically meaningless now. Enkrid dismissed the thought. Suddenly, a spearhead thrust towards him. The heart of the beast responded. Boldness surfaced. Without it, his body would have frozen, leading to his death. Enkrid instinctively twisted his body to the left and swung his sword upward from below. He couldn't cut through the oiled spear shaft with his clumsy swing. The shaft deflected away. The spearhead had suddenly emerged from the fog. Enkrid tried to gauge the position from which the spearhead had come and moved forward. Then another spearhead flew at him. He barely blocked it again. As he blocked it, he thought. His stance was off, and his weight distribution was a mess. The only thing he did right was gripping his sword tightly. He had forgotten all the nagging lessons Ragna had drilled into him.
What a mess.
Of course, he didn't expect to master it after just one lesson. So what should he do?
Move back,
Ragna said. Enkrid moved in the opposite direction of his words. Thanks to Jackson, his hearing had become more sensitive. He couldn't see, but he could hear.
Die, damn it.
Amidst the screams and curses coming from all directions, Enkrid threw himself forward.
Squad leader.
He heard Ragna's startled cry behind him, and then a spearhead pierced his neck.
Precise.
Rather than making a clumsy hole in his body, this was better. A horrible pain spread from his neck to his entire body. His vision started to go dark.
Crazy bastard.
The soldier who had stabbed Enkrid muttered. He was startled by Enkrid suddenly thrusting his neck forward.
Die.
The soldier kicked Enkrid. The spearhead slid out, bringing a second wave of excruciating pain. Enkrid felt death approaching. He knew that in just a few breaths the darkness would fully envelop him. He was satisfied with death approaching. What was terrible, the pain and the fear of death that never became easier to her, no matter how many times it was repeated.
Because of this.
The today where he could learn the basics from Ragna had begun, and it was so enjoyable.
Heh.
Enkrid laughed, blood gushing out. The enemy soldier, seeing this, clicked his tongue. He had encountered a madman, completely deranged. Darkness enveloped him. When he opened his eyes, today had begun again.
Why do you go to such lengths?
Ragna asked. This time, instead of scratching his forehead, Enkrid answered immediately.
Because I want to be good with a sword.
It was a different answer from before, but the goal remained the same.
Do you want to learn the sword?
Of course. Ragna made the offer again, and Enkrid accepted. The second day of basic training began. The second today started. They stood on the battlefield once more. The fog spread out.
What the damn it?
Rem cursed again. This time, Enkrid parried the spear shaft 3 times before letting the spearhead pierce his neck again. By bad luck, it only grazed him. His neck skin was torn, spilling blood onto the ground.
Damn it.
The thought of dying from excessive bleeding was excruciating. Before he could dwell on it, another enemy soldier thrust a spearhead into him. He was grateful. He died once more, and the third today began.
Where did you learn that step?
Ragna abruptly asked on the 5th today. Of course you taught me. Enkrid couldn't be honest.
I've been to over 20 training schools.
Some of them were close to being frauds, but many taught properly. Ragna nodded. As Enkrid moved based on the steps he learned from Ragna, Ragna's expression became more lively. He was enjoying this moment. To be honest, Ragna wasn't a great teacher. He couldn't be. A genius doesn't look at their own feet. That's why it's difficult for them to teach the path they've taken. How do you explain something that you just do naturally? When he says to strike with the sword, he thinks you just strike. He doesn't explain the steps and weight shifts needed in between. No, he can't explain them. He's the worst type to open a swordsmanship school. Enkrid realized this on the first day, but it was fine. If the teacher is a mess, the student just has to be good. In that sense, Enkrid was arguably the best on the continent.
Where should my foot go? Which direction should my toes point?
Do I have to tell you that too?
It's not a tone of criticism. He's genuinely curious.
Yes.
Ragnar corrected his posture by telling him the direction his toes should point and showed his own stance. That stance was exemplary of basic techniques. Anyone with an eye for talent would drool over such skills. Just watching Ragnar's stance repeatedly helped Enkrid.
How about the weight shift?
Yes, do it at that timing.
Enkrid asked, and Ragnar answered. Throughout the 12 repetitions of today, Ragnar only taught Enkrid steps and posture.
Stance and footwork first. Basics next. Sometimes you manage a decent swing. Right now, you're not even capable of chopping firewood.
If the enemy soldier dies from that downward strike, thank him 3 times for dying. So, was I dancing just now?
It was a dance. Since you held a sword, it might be called a sword dance, but I don't want to call it that. Let's name it the stick dance.
Ragnar delivered his sarcastic remarks calmly.
Was this guy always like this?
Rem was a much softer teacher by comparison. Sometimes his comments made you wonder if he was crazy, but overall he was satisfying. Every day felt like breaking out of an egg and being reborn. As they started practicing diagonal slashes, Ragnar spoke.
The line connecting the opponent and yourself is called the attack line. This line is usually the shortest distance between two people and the path the weapon will take during an attack. Blocking the opponent's attack line and extending your own, this is also a basic. Do you understand? It doesn't seem like you do. Oh, is this one of those things? Where you understand it in your head, but your body won't cooperate. Let me rephrase. The squad leader understands it only with his mouth.
Ragnar was a person who couldn't teach without sarcasm. Learning and learning again, 20 days passed, 25 days passed.
I thought your basics were terrible, but at least you know how to use your feet.
It was something he heard on the 35th day today. By this time, Enkrid's behavior had changed a bit. He didn't die immediately after the mist settled. He dodged the first thrust of the spear, then charged in and died. Spears often stuck into his body like a porcupine. It was a pretty decent method. Sometimes a spear would miss. Why would anyone withdraw a spear when someone runs at them asking to be killed? I understand. It must be baffling to see someone suddenly rushing in asking to be killed. When the spear missed, he had to writhe for an hour before dying. That was truly an unbearable sequence of pain and a series of horrible moments. Each time, Ragnar would call or shout at Enkrid.
Squad leader crazy, hey.
Eventually, in urgent situations, he would just shout, hey. Enkrid faithfully filled each day.
Your posture is better than I thought.
He improved little by little. Every time he changed, Ragnar frowned.
Until yesterday, you definitely.
He would mutter like this.
Where did you learn that?
When 100 days had passed, Ragnar asked,
Who are you?
When Enkrid looked at him wondering what he was talking about, Ragnar exclaimed,
You were a mess until yesterday. How did you improve so much in one day? Is it magic?
Ragnar was astonished. Enkrid burst out laughing at his reaction.
Why? Do you think my skills are better than you expected?
It's more than just a little. I'm starting to wonder if you're really the squad leader.
Ragnar looked at him with genuine suspicion. This was the squad full of troublemakers, and Ragnar was an eccentric himself.
So are you not going to teach me?
It's not that.
Ragnar started again with a hesitant attitude. After that, they practiced with an imaginary sparring partner. Concepts of the attack line, how to grip the sword, and how to use the sword for defense.
If it's a good quality sword, you can block with the side. Otherwise, block with the blade. Slashing, thrusting, cutting. These 3 are the basics. Your steps and posture aren't bad, so focus on refining these 3 fundamental techniques.
Ragnar taught many types of steps: advancing, passing by, penetrating, evading, sidestepping, turning around and making a wide turn. Just memorizing these was mentally exhausting, but through practice they became somewhat ingrained in his body. Even a slow learner improved with one-on-one guidance from someone of this skill level, while the subtleties were invisible to a genius. For Enkrid, every slight improvement was exhilarating.
Picture your opponent in your mind, then swing your sword.
He continued learning through dozens of repetitions of today. Diagonal slashes, sword binds, wrapping strikes, angled cuts, overhead horizontal slashes, side slashes, top-down slashes, counter strikes, half-sword fighting. parrying, deflecting continuous strikes, penetrating, drawing cuts. As time passed, Ragnar's sarcastic remarks diminished.
You're better than I thought. Where did you learn the binding technique?
One of my previous instructors drilled binding into me relentlessly.
Excellent.
Ragnar seemed satisfied with that. He used this approach when learning other techniques as well.
The previous training school said my overhead horizontal slash was always a mess. If you're going to teach me swordsmanship, we should start with that.
I'm the one teaching, but it seems you've already decided what you want to learn.
Not necessarily.
When Enkrid shrugged, Ragnar conducted a short test. Then he soon followed Enkrid's suggestion.
Let's do that.
Ragnar would never know, but after repeating today several times and teaching, he would move on once he thought it was enough. Each time that happened, Enkrid moved on to the next lesson. Repeating today, sweating under the blazing sun as their roof. What might have been tedious and nauseating for someone else was not so for Enkrid. When about 200 days had passed, upon opening his eyes, he saw a black river. He saw a ferryman with his eyes covered. Although he didn't see the ferryman's mouth open, a voice clearly pierced his ears.
Are you crazy? You keep dying on your own, you foolish idiot.
The ferryman's tone was calm, but the content was not. Before Enkrid could respond, he woke up from the dream. Again, it was the familiar today. Enkrid just opened his eyes and didn't move. He fell into thought.
Did you have a wet dream or something? What are you doing?
Next to him, Rem made a noise like a puppy might make. Ignoring him, Enkrid got up.
Let's just assume he wanted to call me a crazy idiot.
Even if he wanted to ask why, he couldn't ask that. There's no point in clinging to a question that won't yield an answer, no matter how much he thinks about it. Enkrid stood up.
Do you know anything about magic?
At those words, Rem quickly turned his head.
Magic.
If you know something, tell me.
Every time the mist rolled in, Rem would say something related to magic. He surely knew something. All this time, Enkrid had been too busy honing the basics of swordsmanship, but now he had some leeway. His training had become second nature. Ragnar was always surprised by how much his skills had improved. Although he hadn't tested his abilities yet, Enkrid felt he had definitely gotten better.
Magic is magic. What else would it be?
Tell me what you know, it sounds interesting.
Normally, Enkrid wouldn't start a conversation like this. Rem grinned and began to speak.
What wind blew that made you curious? All right, let's put it simply. Do you know the difference between magic and witchcraft? Magic is more common.
Although rare, magicians could be seen occasionally. But witchcraft? Enkrid, who had traveled all over the continent, had never seen it. It was that rare.
That's not incorrect.
Rem said as he tidied up his sleeping spot. He roughly rolled up the blanket and pushed it aside, put on his boots, and stepped outside. Enkrid followed him out. It was the same today as always. He didn't feel bored. Whatever today was, for Enkrid, it was always an enjoyable day. As Enkrid followed, Rem continued.
Witchcraft requires a medium. I know magic sometimes needs a medium too, but witchcraft relies heavily on sacrifices or mediums. Without them, it can't even begin.
Did your tribe use that too?
Rem was from the western frontier. That area became a frontier because the Central Continental Empire won the war. Before that, the West was the land of different tribes. This story was over 100 years old. Now it had firmly become the western frontier, and the western tribes had been assimilated as a part of one race. They were still derogatorily called barbarians sometimes, but witchcraft had originated from the West. That was common knowledge.
I've seen it few times. But do you know that there are very few real witch doctors? The ones wandering the continent are all charlatans.
If Rem says so, it must be true. Enkrid nodded and went back to his tasks.
Where are you going?
Training.
He went to meet Ragnar to hone his basics again. Around the 250th repetition of today, Ragnar spoke up.
Have your fundamentals always been this solid?
Ragnar's red pupils widened as he brushed his blonde hair aside.
It seems you've always specialized in the longsword.
Yeah, that sounds about right. He had been training with this sword all along. It's unfamiliar, but his hand is used to it. It's the first time this sword has felt Enkrid's touch, but this process has been repeated many times. It's the familiarity gained through repeated days.
It's time for some real combat,
Ragnar said after training. Enkrid nodded, acknowledging.
What are you doing? They're calling us.
Rem called them. On the way back, Enkrid got some bread through Kreis and started chewing. He soaked the hard bread in water and chewed it down, also getting some jerky to eat. He checked his equipment and stood back on the battlefield. As the long sword he exchanged with Ragna swung at his waist, Rem asked,
Didn't you pay a lot for the sword you were using?
This one feels more comfortable.
I've seen many guys switch weapons overnight and end up dead.
"Is that a curse or a concern?"
Worry about yourself.
He exhaled and steadied his mind. The heart of the beast is said to give courage, but he couldn't rely on that alone. If it's real combat, it should be for the sake of tomorrow. Enkrid thought before the enemy came into view.
Witchcraft needs a medium.
That medium is incredibly important. According to Rem, it is. What if the enemy stayed in the tall grass not for an ambush, but for concealment? What if they had something they wanted to hide? Enkrid had seen it beforehand, flagpoles and banners. When he set fire to one tent, instead of killing the intruder, they were busy putting out the fire. Soon the enemy came into view. A soldier from the adjacent 3rd Squad, holding a spear, frowned and muttered.
Why is their formation like that?
It was a formation clustered around the flagpoles, with no tactical value. Then it must hold only ritualistic value. 6 flagpoles and banners rose above the enemy. They are the mediums of witchcraft. Fog spread and obscured his vision. All right, let's swim through the fog of witchcraft. Enkrid's ears twitched. The keen hearing he got from Jackson would now replace his sight.
Do I really have to learn the sword?
Ragna had said it. It was a biting remark. It meant that his body couldn't keep up, and it was true. Enkrid was not born with talent. He lived by adding only hard work to his dull body. However, he had met countless instructors, learned swordsmanship, and had time to ponder alone. His thinking was flexible, and his adaptability was excellent. The initial learning was difficult, but once he mastered it and entered actual combat, it was different. In fact, one is born with some talent. Flexibility and adaptability, that was Enkrid's talent.
Use whatever fits the situation and need.
By the standards of the Kingdom of Naurilia, he was at least intermediate. In the mercenary world, he was also intermediate. His skill level was average wherever he went. That was Enkrid's current position. But aside from skill, his combat power in real situations was excellent. He had lived a life with minimal talent. Enkrid knew how to make full use of what he had. A soldier's spearhead flies toward him. His sharpened ears hear the swoosh of the spear cutting through the air. It wasn't as precise as what he could see, but he caught the direction. He pictured the opponent's movements in his mind.
A step to the side.
Enkrid stepped aside. The heart of the beast brought him boldness. He put strength in his left heel and moved his right foot back, turning his body. With that move, the spearhead whizzed past his face. Even though the spearhead suddenly flew out of the fog, Enkrid wasn't flustered. There was no need to be. It was a spear that had already stabbed him to death dozens of times. He had avoided the first spear thrust over 200 times. Instead of drawing his sword, Enkrid grabbed the middle of the spear shaft and pulled. The enemy soldier, dragged by the sudden force, opened his mouth in surprise.
Huh?
The enemy soldier's head emerged from the fog, and Enkrid grabbed it and twisted. The soldier's neck broke. A person with a broken neck cannot survive. As the soldier with the broken neck crumbled to the ground, Enkrid picked up the dead soldier's spear. Before the fog spread in his mind, he recalled the enemy's formation. They were all clustered together.
No matter where I throw it, I'll hit someone.
He stomped the ground with his left foot and threw the spear with all his might. The spear cut through the air, and with a thud it lodged into something. A death cry was heard.
What the crazy?
The sounds of the enemy soldiers' confusion. Enkrid, listening carefully after throwing the spear, ducked low and charged forward. Even if someone could see through the fog, it would be hard to spot someone rushing in low to the ground. Thud, thud, thud. Crossbow bolts and arrows flew over his head.
Arg, damn arrows.
From behind, the screams and curses of his allies erupted. His hair might have stood on end, but it was fine. He had done this many times before. In fact, the lack of tension was more of a problem. Enkrid closed the distance and drew his longsword. He gauged the distance by sound, and it was precise. He drew his sword, held it with both hands, and performed a modified upper horizontal slash. The original upper horizontal slash was a technique where you block the opponent's sword with your guard and slash with the back edge. Enkrid altered it as he pleased. The stance was similar. Holding the sword above his crown parallel to the ground, he changed his grip. It was a thumb-raised saber grip. In that position, he drew a circle with his sword. Due to his crouched posture, the upper horizontal slash became a lower horizontal slash. It was an unconventional stance, so the sword didn't carry as much force, but it was an unexpected strike. The enemy couldn't react in time. Thud, thwack, he felt resistance as the blade cut through.
Gah, what the hell, on the ground.
Well, you noticed quickly, didn't you?
Breaking through the fog and rising up, Enkrid saw the enemy soldiers. Even though his field of vision was limited to the range of his sword, it was something. He saw the enemy, their weapons, and his own sword. The situation is different now. 3 of them had been severely slashed in the shins. They were all limping, bleeding heavily, and armed with crossbows. One of them gritted his teeth and aimed his crossbow. Enkrid moved swiftly. He stepped diagonally forward with his left foot, his right foot following. In an instant, his position changed. The bolt flew past where he had been. Enkrid didn't just dodge the bolt. At the same time, he attempted a downward slash from above. The heavy longsword descended from above. The enemy soldier with the crossbow reflexively drew a short sword and tried to block it, forming a cross with the longsword. Enkrid pressed down with his strength. Clang! Crack! Unable to withstand the force, the opposite blade of the short sword pressed into the leather helmet and sank into the enemy's head. It wasn't so much a cut as it was a crushing blow. The enemy, head shattered and frothing blood, fell backward. Blood poured from the deeply indented leather helmet, creating a red curtain in front of the soldier's face.
Gah, gah.
The enemy soldier with the shattered head couldn't speak, falling on his backside, his vision blurring. Enkrid withdrew his sword, taking a step back and turning his body. In an instant, he moved a step to the side. A soldier's short spear whizzed past where he had just been. The spearhead grazed his left side, tearing his cloth armor slightly, and that was all. After dodging, he thrust his sword. Not quickly, but slowly. The soldier who had swung the spear reflexively pulled back and blocked the blade with a spear shaft. Think, the sword and spear shaft met. In that position, the sword started to glide down the spear shaft. With a forward step, he followed through with a bind and subsequent slash. Scrr! The sound of the spear shaft being shaved down was heard. The sword's destination was the enemy soldier's chest. In an instant, the blade had traveled down the spear shaft and slashed open the soldier's chest. Flesh was cut and bones were shattered. When he pulled out his sword, blood spurted out. A stream of blood soaked Enkrid's chest. In a slightly crouched position, he retrieved his sword and stood up. With a flick, he straightened his knees and stood tall. What he had learned so far were the basics. It was a time to discard bad habits and build anew. To be honest, he had just barely returned to his previous level. However, having now trained in the basics of swordsmanship, what he had was completely different. It was like adding wings to a lion. Enkrid's flexible thinking produced results beyond his skill level. His blood-soaked sword moved among the remaining soldiers. Enkrid silently performed his sword dance. 6 banner units. The commander of the Duchy of Aspen pondered.
Even if they realize it's magic, they won't know which of those 6 to take down.
Victory was assured. Now it was time to decide what kind of victory to achieve.
Cut off their retreat.
The Greyhound unit, which had been held as an independent reserve, moved. It was behind the Narilia Kingdom's army. Now, if the enemies, startled by the fog, tried to flee, they would run into the Greyhound unit. The commander gave the order and reviewed his strategy for any flaws. There were none. General Frog had come and emphasized that failure was not an option for this mission. If it weren't for that, a general wouldn't have come to this battlefield. The commander gave the order again.
Kill them all.
This battle would change the fortunes of Aspen and Narilia. As his order was given, Enkrid was performing his sword dance with the 1st Banner Unit.
Damn it.
The battalion commander of Narilia thought he was in a nightmare.
We were outplayed.
If the enemy had something prepared, so did they. But if they lost all their troops here, their preparations would be for nothing.
Retreat, retreat.
Cries for retreat echoed from all around. The battalion commander was anything but calm. Even as his allies retreated, crossbow bolts flew at them.
Damn those crossbow units.
The battalion commander felt a surge of dizziness. He marveled at how they managed to hide so many crossbows. Where? The scout report had already provided the answer.
The tall grass field.
Now was not the time to be thinking about this idly. The battalion commander's mind escaped reality.
Get a grip. Regroup.
Two somewhat skilled company commanders tried to rally the troops, but the enemy's skill was exceptional. The unit moving in from behind was the Greyhound. An independent company, the pride of Aspen's forces. The battalion commander realized they had been outmaneuvered. He desperately tried to pull himself together.
It's the fog of annihilation. Aspen's forces have employed a sorcerer.
Damn bastards.
How do we clear the fog?
Few of his subordinates had an answer.
Bring someone who knows.
They couldn't see ahead, and the enemy was pounding their allies from both front and back. At this rate, they could be annihilated. No, they would be annihilated. Soon a subordinate brought the answer.
We need to destroy the medium of the spell.
The medium? The banner.
Charge towards the banner.
The battalion commander shouted.
We don't know which direction the banner is.
The lieutenant uttered words of despair. The enemy they initially saw had shifted positions like clockwork. They spun around in circles, making it impossible to pinpoint their location. The battalion commander couldn't shake the word annihilation from his mind. While the battalion commander was agonizing, the ferry company commander, in charge of the 4th Company, realized the enemy wouldn't let them retreat easily. Her prediction was correct, and that wasn't a good thing.
Without a turnaround, we'll all die.
She thought a new wind was needed on the battlefield, but ultimately that wind didn't come. The battle ended in a crushing defeat. The ferry company commander barely survived, escaping death by a hair. As she fled, the fog lifted behind her. It was annihilation. There couldn't have been 50 survivors among their allies. Enkrid had fought well, incredibly well, and he was satisfied. Though his allies were nearly annihilated, he alone had taken down nearly 20 soldiers. Blood flowed from his hand gripping the sword. His forearm had been slashed in the recent battle.
My strength is fading.
Up until now, he had only invested time in basic training. Ragna had told him not to spar until he had eliminated all his bad habits and completed his training. Then he immediately added,
Not something you should say on a battlefield.
Even Ragna must have realized how nonsensical it sounded, telling someone not to fight to correct bad habits in the middle of a battlefield. What then? Just die quietly? But Enkrid managed. Instead of quietly surrendering his life, he excluded combat from his considerations, and today, for the first time, he demonstrated his skills in actual combat.
It's different.
Until now, whether it was Valen mercenary sword technique or anything else, he fought using any means necessary. That was how he had survived, and that hasn't changed. The difference now was that swordsmanship had become central to his fighting.
I want to learn more.
His desire for learning surged even more. He didn't want to end with just the basics. Having killed the equivalent of 2 squads on his own, the enemy soldiers hesitated to approach him. For some reason, as he held his ground, Enkrid's vision cleared further. The fog created by sorcery no longer affected him. He could see the enemy forming a semicircle before him. They all held crossbows.
Let's fight one-on-one like real men.
He spoke to test the skills he had gained through his basics one more time.
Crazy bastard.
The one who appeared to be the enemy squad leader said, Thwip. The crossbows released their bolts. Quarrels embedded themselves all over his body. The quarrel lodged in his eye brought excruciating pain.
It's agonizing.
But it also brought a sense of joy. As he lay dying, Enkrid thought about what he had to do amidst the repeated events of today. Ragna constantly emphasized the basics.
Train and train again, and keep fighting with your life on the line, and someday it will stick to you.
It was a very irresponsible statement, but it had meaning. Enkrid needed more real combat. The word death settled over his entire body. Before he took his last breath, an enemy soldier looked down at him and said,
Persistent bastard.
Even until then, Enkrid was gripping his sword tightly. The blood he had shed pooled on the ground.
No matter what happens, even if you die, do not let go of your sword. That is the first thing.
Countless instructors had said this. Ragna had said it, and Rem had said the same thing. Enkrid had done just that.
Two.
An enemy soldier, who had lost countless comrades, spat on Enkrid's face, and that was the end. Morning dawns. A new day begins again. Enkrid reflected on what he had gained from yesterday's fight.
I need more real combat.
That was the conclusion he reached. He sought out Ragna again to learn.
Your basics are pretty well established, but you seem like someone who has trained alone all their life. Where did you learn the basics of swordsmanship?
That was true, he felt it himself. What he needed now was actual combat.
From here and there.
From here and there, well, let's go with that. It's good to make what you've learned in training come out naturally through sparring. And whoever your teacher was, they taught you well.
That teacher was you. Ragna unwittingly praised himself. Enkrid responded with a really, and focused on sparring, and how enjoyable it was. In the battles that followed, Enkrid single-handedly slew 30 soldiers. It wasn't solely by skill. There were bolts and arrows flying at him. He achieved it by dodging them skillfully. He had to use his wits to increase his combat experience even a little. He repeated several more days, and he swung his sword again. Soon, what was called the basics stuck perfectly to his body.
In terms of fundamentals, there's nothing more I can teach you.
Eventually, Ragna had to admit this, as Enkrid's skills had significantly improved.
I say it fit hands.
Ragna spoke.
You start with your eyes, move with your feet, and end with your hands, the sword.
He did as instructed. By using his eyes, he predicted the enemy's movements, positioned himself with his feet, and used the sword to finish. In the next real battle, he put it into practice. Instead of reacting to what he saw, he predicted and evaded. The enemy's attack line could not reach Enkrid, but Enkrid's attack line reached the enemy. Thrusting the sword was just a confirmation. The sword pierced the throat. As he pulled the sword out to the side, muscles, nerves, and blood vessels were severed, causing blood to gush out. As soon as Enkrid killed the enemy soldier, he rolled on the ground and struck another soldier's shin with his pommel. Since there was no guard, it was natural for the bone to break. The falling enemy flailed. Enkrid pulled a quarrel from the ground and stabbed it into the soldier's heart. Due to the armor, the arrow only went halfway in. He stood up and pressed it down with his foot. With a squelching sound, the quarrel buried itself in the shaft. He lifted the dead body with one hand and tilted it to the side. With a thud, the quarrel embedded into the corpse. Here, Enkrid made a small mistake. A quarrel nicked his thigh. Reduced mobility made it hard to rampage among the enemies. Still, he did what he could. 32. He had killed 2 more in one day, even though he had made a mistake in the middle.
Eyes, feet, hands.
See with your eyes, move with your feet, end with your hands. He thought a few more real battles would help him master it. Enkrid continued this way. By repeating today's actions, he roughly understood the enemy's movements.
They protect the flagpoles.
And they always circled in one direction. If he charged head-on one day, he would run to the left the next. He had never broken the flagpole, but he came close enough to almost touch it. Enkrid felt a thirst. He felt that something was missing in himself.
Can't I do it alone?
If that were the case, he could bring Rem or Ragna along, but stubbornness took hold. He had learned and mastered proper swordsmanship. He wanted to take one more step forward. It wasn't impatience, but the thought of advancing kept coming to him.
Let's see.
If this was just being stubborn, he could reassess afterward. Enkrid had an opportunity gained through repeated toe days.
Hey, who are you?
After several battles, he faced the enemy's platoon leader. It wasn't a familiar face. It was someone he had never seen before, with a rat-like beard.
What do you think?
Enkrid replied, with a slight smile. Facing death, he couldn't act so boldly. The rat-bearded soldier of the Duchy of Aspen swallowed hard and thrust his spear.
Unlucky bastard.
After dying and reviving, it was back to training. As the concept of eyes, feet, and hands became familiar, Ragna moved on. What started as getting used to the basics soon included the history and concepts of swordsmanship.
Fortunately, the roots of what you learned align with mine.
Of course, since Ragna had taught him.
I imitated one of the particularly good instructors, and it seems I'm really lucky.
Enkrid said something absurd, but Ragna had no choice but to believe it. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. The fact that his skills improved in one day could be accepted. He had been continuously training the basics alone, but if he didn't know how to apply them, this could happen. Of course, this was also very unusual, but it wasn't worth worrying about. The basics of Northern-style swordsmanship settled into his body, and he decided to move on to the same concept. What was the point of questioning it? The squad leader had never questioned his past, so he should do the same.
Do you know respectful and prompt recovery?
Enkrid nodded at Ragnar's words. Respectful and prompt recovery. This refers to the principles of the straight sword, the heavy sword, the illusory sword, the swift sword, and the gentle sword. To elaborate, a correct and precise sword, a heavy and vigorous sword, a mesmerizing and deceptive sword, a fast and faster sword, a soft and flowing sword. 500 years ago, an unparalleled genius was born. He was a child born in a small farmhouse, truly a genius among geniuses. At the age of 9, this genius killed a group of bandits attacking the farmhouse with just a wooden stick. At the mere age of 9, he killed 12 adult bandits, some of whom were quite skilled with swords.
This is swordsmanship.
The 9-year-old child was precocious. It was said he lost his parents early. By observing the bandits wielding their swords, the child understood the principles of swordsmanship. After hearing that a young boy had killed 12 bandits with just a wooden stick, a nobleman sought out Jaituld. He adopted the boy. Thus the child was given the surname Oniak, Leonesis Oniak. This genius thus gained a name. Leonesis was blessed with a heaven-sent talent, but he was also born with a matching misfortune. At around the age of 10, he developed a disease that caused his limbs to lose strength. It was an incurable disease that no magician, doctor, or healer on the continent could cure. The disease paralyzed his entire body before he turned 12. Despite his illness, the Oniak family did not abandon Leonesis. The unfortunate genius was almost forgotten. But at the age of 20, paralyzed from head to toe, Leonesis made a mark in the history of swordsmanship. He synthesized all existing swordsmanship into 5 distinct categories. These are the principles of the straight, heavy, illusory, swift, and gentle swords. Despite being unable to use his body, he rewrote the history of swordsmanship. This marked the beginning of the Oniak family's rise to the top of the empire. The school of swordsmanship created by Leonesis was passed down through generations and became the established norm. Today, it is commonly referred to as the Northern Heavy Sword, the Central Straight and Gentle Swords, the Western Swift Sword, the Southern Illusory Sword, and the Eastern Technical Sword. The continent is largely divided into 5 regions, each with its own development in weaponry.
I have developed a technique to use the Northern Heavy Sword. It's more useful than the beast's innards.
It was another sunny and windy day. On this day, Enkrid learned a new technique from Ragnar. From Rem, he learned the heart of the beast. From Jackson, he learned the sense of the blade. And from Ragnar, he learned something called the focus point.
The principle is simple. Forget everything around you. Focus on your opponent with your eyes, and concentrate on what you are doing. Don't take in anything else, just focus.
The explanation was a mess.
The basics of the heavy sword lie in its foundation. It's called the sword that breaks even when blocked, the sword you can't avoid even when you know it's coming, and the sword that pours all its power into a single strike. That's how you do it, with focus.
If that could be achieved through concentration, then what did it mean for those who couldn't do it?
I'll teach you a little trick.
With those words, Ragnar's sword turned into a beam of light. Even though he had just changed swords and it was not yet familiar in his hand, the blade was invisible. Even his arm, swinging like a whip, was not visible. In just a flash, something passed by his neck. The blade grazed his neck skin. It was only after his skin was cut that he realized how fast the sword had been. His nape felt warm. Blood trickled down.
Are you harassing the squad leader, you bastard?
Rem appeared out of nowhere. Glaring, Enkrid put his hand to his neck.
I almost died.
It was a perilous strike, cutting through the skin with such unseen speed.
They say a person concentrates dozens of times more in the moment of death. I'm helping you.
You crazy bastard. What use is learning such a technique after you're dead? Do you even know how long it took the squad leader to master the heart of the beast, huh?
He was oddly emphasizing something. Wasn't the loom too long? As Enkrid tried to say something, Ragnar snorted.
Because the teacher was bad. What? Are you saying you want an axe in your head?
Rem raised one hand to his ear.
I'm not an ignorant barbarian. My teaching methods are rational.
Rational Enkrid pondered the meaning of that word. To him, Rem and Ragnar were the same.
But if you're from the polar tribe, aren't you also a barbarian?
Ragnar's skin was pale and his eyes were red. These were characteristics of the polar tribe, the northern people.
Don't put me on the same level as the Western barbarians. It's very unpleasant, extremely.
Fine, just die. After you're dead, I'll personally go north and bury you.
It seemed like they were about to have another argument. Enkrid intervened.
You know what I'm going to say, right?
Despite his interruption, Ragnar's gaze remained fixed beyond Enkrid.
I know the squad leader is as dull as a northern ox, but I didn't realize he had mastered the basics this well. What the hell, you bastard? Stop twisting your words and get ready. I'm going to stick an axe in your head. Crazy barbarian bastard.
The northern ox minimizes its movements to withstand the cold. It's a metaphor used to describe someone incredibly dull. Although both of them kept calling him dull, Enkrid didn't feel wronged.
You said you'd teach me a trick.
Enkrid held Ragnar with his words and turned his head toward Rem. No words were necessary, just a look was enough. Rem, who had been fuming, snorted and yelled as Enkrid stared at him.
I said gather up.
Then he turned and strode back toward the camp.
I guess we should return.
Seeing this, Ragnar said. As he tried to gather his drawn sword, Enkrid grabbed his wrist.
The trick.
The thirst for learning was the driving force behind Enkrid's actions, especially now, as he was about to learn something new. He called it the focus point. Concentrate one, a technique Ragnar had refined from an old secret art. He was eager to learn it.
It won't be easy.
Even the basics were not easy. Adopting new stances, learning new steps, discarding old habits, and mastering new thrusts and slashes were all challenging, yet it was enjoyable. Joy followed. The pleasure of growing day by day filled his entire being. He had dreamed of becoming a knight, but it might have just been because he loved the sword so much. When he held and swung the sword, Enkrid found such joy that he forgot all worldly matters. As he held Ragnar's wrist, Ragnar spoke calmly.
You need to be in a life-threatening situation. When you feel like you're going to die, a person's nerves become extremely alert. You need to repeat that heightened sensation countless times.
The trick was similar to when he learned the heart of the beast. However, while the heart of the beast required boldness even in the face of death, the focus point technique that Ragnar spoke of was the opposite. You had to struggle desperately to avoid death. The fear of death would make a person's nerves stand on edge like needles.
Combine it with real combat.
Enkrid made a plan in his head and moved.
Just learning the trick won't be enough. Tell me what it feels like once you master it. It feels like everything around you disappears, and the sword moves as you will.
Ragnar spoke readily. Enkrid looked into Ragnar's red eyes. He saw a seriousness he hadn't seen before.
What has suddenly gotten into him?
Ragnar was known for his whims, but it was the first time he had shown such enthusiasm. With a hidden passion, a fire burning deep in his eyes, Ragnar spoke.
It's time to go.
Enkrid nodded.
Indeed.
The battle resumed and fog rolled in.
Magic? Damn bastard.
Rem was angry.
Lower your stance.
Ragnar shouted at Enkrid, who was running. Previously, he was busy trying to stop him, but not now. Now he knew that Enkrid wouldn't fall to some mediocre soldier. As Enkrid charged, he faced the enemy soldiers once again, following the sequence of eyes, feet, and hands.
Start with the quarrel squad.
What had changed from before was that, through the repetition of many days, Enkrid had memorized the enemy's formation. Well, to be precise, it wasn't that he had memorized it consciously. He had internalized it naturally. Before the first enemy soldier could even thrust his spear, Enkrid was already close, stabbing upward with a dagger. Thud! The dagger pierced the chin and roof of the mouth. He abandoned the dagger and pushed the dead soldier with his shoulder.
Ka.
The soldier pushed back and was startled. In that moment, Enkrid threw 2 daggers. The flying daggers struck the necks of 2 enemy soldiers. It was an extraordinary feat. He then drew his longsword and slashed it diagonally. A spear shaft blocked it. Anticipating this, Enkrid used the rebound from hitting the spear to retrieve his sword and slash the neck of the enemy soldier on the opposite side. The well-sharpened blade cut through the soldier's neck. It was another fight, another repeated day fighting and dying again. In doing so, Enkrid struggled desperately. He understood the trick the moment he heard it. It wasn't about boldly facing death, but about desperately trying to avoid it that was crucial. Ultimately, he couldn't escape death. But that was fine. He would get what he wanted anyway. Of course, he had to accomplish his mission in the process.
The flagpole.
Attacking the flagpole that served as the medium for the magic, he layered the goal over the real battle. Enkrid charged toward his objective. Through the repeated days, Enkrid knew the movements of the enemy's soldiers in advance. The soldiers, trusting the fog, were startled by a single attacker. Enkrid took full advantage of that. Every day, after learning Focus Point from Ragna, he would plunge into practice. This was Enkrid's repeated routine today, countless repetitions. Despite facing death repeatedly, the technique of single-point focus seemed just out of reach.
Don't get impatient.
Enkrid shifted his thinking. For now, let's try breaking the flagpole first. When the battle began again, Enkrid pondered how to minimize damage. Thinking and contemplating were among his specialties. Once more, the fog settled in, the fog of death. Hence, this spell was called the Fog of Annihilation. Of course, Enkrid didn't know the name of the spell. He just realized he couldn't succumb like this. Before the fog settled, and Rem could shout anything, Enkrid spoke first.
Everyone, get down.
They were caught off guard. Even the platoon leader ducked his head at someone's shout.
Shields up.
When Enkrid shouted again, the allies instinctively raised their shields. Feeling his left hand empty, Enkrid grabbed a shield as well. Lowering his stance and running while holding the shield at an angle, several bolts and arrows thudded against the shield. The oil-soaked shield performed its role dutifully.
I should have brought a shield earlier.
There had been times when he was hit by bolts or arrows while running here and had to start fighting. Thanks to this, he became familiar with the routes to approach while dodging. He ran forward while thinking. From his past experiences, he knew that to escape the fog's influence, he had to get close to the enemy. Enkrid did just that. While running, Enkrid suddenly pushed off the ground and threw himself to the left. Whoosh, whoosh! Spears passed through the spot where Enkrid had been. It was a pattern he had already memorized. You can't demonstrate Focus Point by deliberately creating a life-or-death crisis. You have to struggle. Enkrid resolved to do so. After dodging the spears, he ran again, getting right up to the enemy's nose. Only then did he see the enemy beyond the fog. The face inside the round leather helmet was extremely startled. Enkrid kicked the ankle of the surprised enemy soldier. He struck the head of the fallen enemy with the edge of his shield. The sound of splitting wood echoed. If the enemy survived that, it would be sheer luck. As he passed the fallen enemy, he drew his longsword. Drawing it and swinging it widely in one motion, several enemy soldiers trying to close in were taken aback. Seeing that, Enkrid mapped out his route in his mind. Today alone, he had repeated this over 300 times. He could navigate the battlefield with his eyes closed. He knew the location of the flagpole and the positioning of the enemy soldiers. From the enemy's perspective, Enkrid's movements must have seemed ghost-like. Ron, a soldier of the Duchy of Aspen, was startled by the sudden movements of the Norillia soldier as soon as the fog rolled in. The soldier sprang out from the left, cutting down several of Ron's comrades, then suddenly disappeared. At least, it seemed that way. It looked as if the soldier had vanished into thin air. In reality, the soldier had just lowered his stance abruptly.
Gah.
Below. He's below.
Ron knew that the fog surrounding him was created by some spell or magic. This fog didn't obscure the vision of his allies. However, the thicker parts of the fog did hinder their view, for instance, at ground level. So, while they could see well above the chest, the ground was harder to make out. The enemy seemed to act as if he knew this.
Kill him, that bastard.
Commotion erupted everywhere. The enemy moved as if he had 10 bodies. Ron tensed up. He was ready to strike the enemy's head the moment he appeared nearby. Tension filled the air.
Ark.
Over here.
The enemy continued to move through the fog on the ground, as if it were his own domain. Ron swallowed hard. It felt like a blade could appear right in front of him at any moment. He felt the urge to urinate. Yet the enemy did not show himself for quite some time. Just as the tension reached its peak,
Break the flagpole!
a scream erupted from the back. It was the voice of the squad leader. Ron quickly turned his head. He saw the squad leader falling forward and an enemy soldier rising next to him. The enemy emerging from the fog on the ground looked like a skeletal soldier rising from a grave.
Was he alone?
Did he cause all this chaos by himself? The enemy, gripping his sword with both hands, struck the flagpole. With one heavy blow, the middle of the flagpole broke. The flag tilted and fell to the side. The flag that had been fluttering in the wind just moments ago lost its sound and movement. The fallen flag kicked up a cloud of dust. Through that dust, the enemy soldier seemed to tilt his head. That's how it appeared to Ron. Then the enemy moved again.
Kill him, kill him.
As someone was dying, they grabbed the enemy soldier's pant leg. It was commendable, a display of the elite soldiers of Aspen, disregarding their own life. Allies swarmed over him like bees. With 2 spears stuck in his left side and 5 quarrels embedded in his thigh, the enemy soldier bled profusely as he asked,
Why isn't the fog clearing? It's supposed to be the medium for the spell.
A squad member scoffed in place of the dead squad leader.
You fool. Why do you think there are 6 flagpoles?
The squad member didn't mince words. The enemy was about to die anyway. Knowing this wouldn't change anything.
5 are decoys and only 1 is real. Crazy bastard.
Why is focus point so difficult? Then again, nothing has been easy so far.
What are you talking about?
Sigh, focus, focus, focus.
He's out of his mind.
The enemy soldier, muttering to himself after asking and hearing the answer, was struck by Ron, who couldn't hold back any longer. His head exploded, spraying blood. The struck enemy writhed on the ground, spewing blood from his limbs.
Grrr.
Ron turned away from the foaming, bloodied enemy and looked around. Even though one enemy had prevented the flag unit from completing its mission, the tide of the battle had already turned. It was a great victory for the Duchy of Aspen. As long as this fog was present, they could not lose. Agonizing pain filled Enkrid's entire body. To forget the pain, he sank into thought.
How did I learn the heart of the beast?
The sense of the blade was greatly aided by the assassin. The heart of the beast was learned by rolling on the battlefield until the brink of death, but focus point was not coming easily. Was the boldness given by the heart of the beast a hindrance? That didn't seem to be the case. If he had easily achieved it within a few attempts, Enkrid would have been a person of outstanding talent. It could have been frustrating, but Enkrid remained calm. He wasn't impatient. There was no need to be.
If it doesn't work, I'll keep at it until it does.
Because his heart was resolute and firm, he did not know despair or frustration. Death would visit him again and he would wake up in the morning. He would steady his mind, trusting his body to the sunlight and wind.
It's called focus point. Do you want to learn it?
Ragna kept teaching as if following a predetermined path, and Enkrid nodded. He learned and learned again, but still couldn't grasp it. Through learning the basics of the Northern-style heavy sword with Ragna, he had a small realization. When learning something for the first time, it must be learned properly.
Does the fear of death make your nerves stand on end?
No matter how much he tried, it felt like an ill-fitting garment, so he asked.
How did you learn it?
I just did.
Ragna said kindly. This made him seem even more annoying. Why was he being kind now? Enkrid almost preferred the times when Ragna spoke harshly.
Just like that?
Yes, I soon became one with the sword by forgetting my surroundings and focusing.
It wasn't said boastfully. His tone was flat.
Really?
Yes, really.
What was trivial for Ragna seemed like an unreachable star for Enkrid. However, this did not stir jealousy or envy in him. If his spirit could be broken by this, he wouldn't have dared to dream of becoming a knight. He repeated the same action countless times. Ragna stopped his sword right in front of Enkrid's eyes, urging him to feel the fear of death. In terms of speed, Ragna seemed faster than Rem. When watching the two fight, Rem appeared faster. Enkrid's mind still vividly remembered their duel. When he actually faced them himself, Ragna seemed faster.
What are you doing? We're supposed to gather. Are you practicing with the squad leader as a straw dummy? Still bitter about losing to me before?
Who's the one who lost? Your head, maybe?
Why do these two always fight whenever they meet?
Let's go.
Back to the battlefield. Enkrid had learned much through death. One of those things was that 5 out of the 6 flagpoles were decoys.
I have to choose the right one.
It was time to test his luck. This time, before the fog even rose, he rushed toward the enemy who had suddenly approached.
Squad leader?
He heard Ragna's astonished question from behind. It must have seemed like a reckless move to anyone.
The squad leader has gone mad.
Rem also shouted. Others were whispering, wondering why he was doing that, questioning if he had lost his mind. At that moment, the fog engulfed them.
What? I can't see.
Enkrid shouted while running.
Get down, shields up.
Having done this before, he expected them to follow his orders, but the result was different this time. The response from his allies was delayed. Arrows and quarrels flew, tearing into his comrades. The enemy, wielding spears, approached and started stabbing while his unit was still in a state of panic.
Why?
The timing was the problem. He should have given them a moment to catch their breath after the initial confusion. It was a mistake he knew well. It's fine. He would do better next time. Others might say that the goddess of luck had kissed him or given him a bag full of coins, but Enkrid knew himself well. He wasn't particularly lucky, the second flagpole he attacked. A fierce battle was necessary, just like before, though he still hadn't mastered focus point. However, combining his newly acquired basic skills with real combat seemed to have significantly improved his abilities.
Still a long way to go.
Enkrid's standards were Rem and Ragnia. It took 3 more days to break the second flagpole. When he broke the flagpole, the squad leader, with a dagger stuck in his belly, laughed and coughed up blood.
It's a decoy, I know.
Enkrid nodded with 2 arrows lodged in his thigh.
What? 4 more to go.
What did you say? Focus, focus.
Was it a lack of concentration that made it difficult? Focus point was challenging. Ignoring the enemy squad leader's chatter, Enkrid focused his concentration. He boldly deflected and parried the enemy's spear, swinging his sword. The upward slash, now several times more familiar, split the enemy's chin. It cleaved from the mouth up to the nose. A quarrel flew from the side. Thunk, it lodged in his side. Thanks to his armor, he didn't die. But he hadn't noticed the 5 soldiers with crossbows. There were about 80 enemy soldiers near the flagpole, a number he couldn't handle alone.
I need to attack the flagpole and also consider a retreat route.
He pondered and deliberated repeatedly. To achieve focus point and break the flagpole, he transcended death. The 3rd flagpole required 5 more days. The 4th flagpole required 7 more days.
If I were the enemy commander, he would hide the flagpole in the safest place.
Before the fog settled, he used 2 more days to observe the enemy formation. Then he saw it. The enemy had encircled a single flag unit. It was in the innermost part. Enkrid warned his allies without making a mistake and ran forward. Everyone ducked well and held their shields properly.
Rem, follow me.
He then brought Rem along.
Magic. What?
Just follow me.
He shouted and dashed forward, with Rem following behind.
What kind of crazy thing are you trying to do?
Enkrid didn't answer and instead charged toward the flag unit blocking their path, with Rem by his side.
Just the 2 of you.
An enemy soldier roared in anger. Enkrid skillfully shifted his position, lowering his body to hide in the fog and leaving the enemy to Rem.
Who cast the spell?
Rem's voice was like a cold flame as he swung his axe. Turning back, Enkrid saw the enemy soldier's head fly off with a thud, even though the axe wasn't clearly visible. Blood spurted like a fountain from the severed neck before the body crumpled to the side.
I'll get the answer from the next one.
Rem went berserk. Watching this, Enkrid mentally mapped out the enemy's movements. It took 5 more days to finally encounter the innermost flag unit. Only after 5 more grueling days could he penetrate that unit. Enkrid used his head. Instead of charging head-on, he slipped in from the side, lowering his stance and watching carefully. He stealthily approached the flagpole. Then someone blocked his way.
Am I dreaming?
The one blocking his way spoke. Who is this guy?
The gods have favored me and granted my wish. I always wanted to kill you with my own hands.
Enkrid tilted his head, looking at the opponent blocking his way. He didn't remember who he was.
You forgot me in just a few days.
For the opponent, it had only been a few days, but for Enkrid, thanks to the repeated days, it had been a year on this battlefield.
Sorry, please introduce yourself.
Enkrid said politely, and a vein popped on the opponent's forehead.
I'm Mitch Hurrier, squad leader of the Duchy of Aspen.
Even hearing the name didn't jog Enkrid's memory.
I see.
When he nodded, Mitch's eyes flared with anger.
You bastard!
Mitch drew his sword in a rage. The clang of the drawn sword seemed somewhat familiar.
Where have I seen this before? Wait.
Enkrid raised his hand to stop him. Mitch pointed his sword at him and asked,
What is it?
I truly don't remember. Who are you?
You'll remember after a few sword strikes.
Mitch charged at him. Enkrid drew his longsword to face him. Clang, clang! Swords clashed, resonating with the sound of metal on metal. They locked swords and then separated, and Mitch was inwardly surprised.
This guy?
His skills had improved significantly.